You got like $3 million, huh? Yeah, we're already building a fancy house for us. Got my dream kitchen planned. My mother-in-law says all dreamy like. I've quit my job. Gonna start a business with Ashley's inheritance. My husband says, looking way too happy about it. Wait a sec. Ashley didn't get any inheritance yet. You're quitting your job and building stuff already. What's the deal? Let's not fib here. It's obvious you got money. How about we take a trip before jumping into this house thing? Hawaii, maybe? My father-in-law adds, making things even more confusing. What are they even thinking? They want to spend the money I got from my mom on whatever they want. I'm mad as heck, but I don't know what to do. A few months back, let me take you there. My name's Ashley. I'm 38, and I teach at a high school. I've been married to David for 12 years. He's 2 years older and works in an office. Right after we tied the knot, our daughter Julie came along, and ever since, my life's been a whirlwind of work and raising her. Today, we're off to see my mom at the hospital. Hey, Grandma, it's been a bit. Ah, Julie dear, come here, my mom says, gently running her fingers through Julie's hair. She looks thinner, and her face isn't as lively. There's this guy in a suit standing by her bed. He nods at me as I glance his way and then leaves. Mom, who's that guy? Just someone I know, nothing to worry about. How are you holding up, Ashley? And David, is he doing okay? My mom's eyes, a soft shade of blue, twinkle as she smiles. She met my dad when he was in the import-export business overseas, and she moved to the U.S. to marry him. Raising a kid in a new country couldn't have been easy. That they did it together. Mom taught me a lot growing up, which is why I'm able to teach now. I'm really grateful to my parents for giving me such a good upbringing. Dad passed away a few years back, and since then, Mom's been on her own, dealing with illness and hospital stays. She handed off the business to a relative and now spends her days quietly in the hospital. I'm good, Mom. Anything you need. Just having you and Julie here is more than enough. After chatting with Mom for a while, Julie and I head home. Julie fills Mom in on school stuff and the latest book she's read. She's 10, a tricky age, but we get along well. Even setting aside my mom goggles, I think she's a smart, honest kid who's growing up nicely. We're back. Hey, welcome back. How's my mom doing? David asks when we walk in. Same old, same old. And you? How was your seminar? Heard good things about it. Excited for the next one. Lately, David's been going to seminars about quitting his job and starting a side hustle. Seems like he's after more money, but his job's not bad, and we're doing fine with my income. I don't like how obsessed he is with money. Probably gets it from his parents. They've always been tight with cash, always asking for small amounts whenever we see them. They've never bothered with Christmas gifts for Julie either. Thankfully, they live far away, so we don't see them much. David helps out around the house, though, so it's manageable. As long as I've got my mom, David, Julie, and our simple life, I'm happy. Then one day, I got a call from the hospital. Mom's condition had taken a turn for the worse, and she was in critical condition. When we reached the hospital, my mom was barely hanging on. Mom, Grandma. Ashley, I've always wanted you to be happy. Take care of Julie. She means everything. I love you. Those were her final words. My mom, who poured her heart into raising me alongside my dad, who cherished Julie more than anything. Seeing her peaceful face in the coffin, all I could do was cry. Julie stood by me, crying too. A while after Mom passed, an envelope arrived from a law firm. Ashley opened it, puzzled by the unfamiliar sender. Inside was a document. I've been given your mother's will, leaving everything to you. Ashley and her mom never talked about inheritance, so she was surprised. But with the letter in hand, she decided to visit the law firm alone. Hi, I'm Ed, the attorney, said the man with glasses, the same one from the hospital room. You were there when I visited my mom, Ashley said, recognizing him. Yeah, we met there. Your mom entrusted me with something, Ed said gently, almost bringing Ashley to tears. 500 million. Ashley exclaimed in shock. Yeah, Ashley. When your dad passed, you let your mom have all the inheritance. Now, with what she had and what she left you, after taxes, that's the sum, Ed explained. I knew my parents were well off, but I never asked for money after getting married, and I avoided talking about inheritance. It's overwhelming, Ashley said, feeling a bit dizzy, but it's a sign of love from my mom. I'll leave it to you, Ed. Your mom cared about you more than anything. She asked me to assist you if needed. You can talk to me about anything, Ed said. Thank you, I really appreciate it. Ashley nodded to Ed and left the room. As time went by, nearing her mother's 49th day memorial, David, her husband, started bringing up her mother's inheritance often. He knew they were wealthy when they married, but Ashley found his constant probing uncomfortable, especially during her mourning period. Whenever she asked him to stop, he would, but then subtly bring it up again later. And then there were her in-laws. At her mother's memorial, her father-in-law offered, Ashley, if you're worried about the inheritance, we can help. We've had our share of inheritance disputes. It can get complicated when unmarried siblings pass away. If you need help, we're here. Her mother-in-law chimed in. Sure, Ashley, who had never felt inclined to involve them before, could only offer a vague response as they pretended to understand. About 3 months after her mother's passing, David, who had been relatively quiet, finally reached his breaking point. Have you gotten your mom's inheritance yet? David's question sent a shiver down Ashley's spine. Not yet, Ashley fibbed. The process is complicated. It's been 3 months since she passed, right? Why the delay? David pressed, but then abruptly announced he was heading to bed, leaving Ashley with a gnawing feeling in her chest. The next day, while Ashley and Julie were cleaning up after dinner, the doorbell rang. Julie rushed to answer it, and Ashley, peering out from the kitchen, saw her in-laws along with David returning from work. Why are they here? Ashley whispered to Julie. It's okay, Mom. I'll go to my room, Julie said, darting away nervously. What's happening? Ashley asked as her in-laws entered. Never mind that, Ed, her father-in-law said cheerfully, grabbing a beer from the fridge. We're here to celebrate. You inherited over $300 million. We've even started building a duplex for us all to live in, complete with your dream kitchen. Listen, Ashley, be happy. Her mother-in-law chimed in dreamily. We're planning to build a duplex. We've put down half of our savings and some money Mom and Dad saved up. The loan's in my name, but you can settle it all with your inheritance. It's a way to give back to them. What? I quit my job. I'm starting a business with your inheritance, David announced, looking oddly pleased. Wait a minute. What's going on? I haven't received any inheritance yet. And why are you quitting your job and talking about a duplex? Let's not play games. It's obvious you got an inheritance. How about we take a trip before diving into house plans? Maybe Hawaii. As chaos unfolded, David and her mother-in-law seemed to agree with Ed. David, with a mocking laugh, said, You're being miserly, Ashley. We checked it out because you kept saying you hadn't received the inheritance. If you don't process it within 3 months, you can't refuse it. So whether you told the truth or not, you've inherited, right? Considering my father-in-law's company, it must be more than $300 million. We'll live comfortably thanks to them. Thanks, Mom. Make sure to arrange money for the duplex and my capital. Hearing David speak like that left her feeling lightheaded. But what kind of people are these, wanting to use my precious inheritance from my mom as they please, indulging in luxury? I was burning with anger, but I couldn't speak. I worried about Julie, who was in the other room. I'm stepping out for a bit. I called out to them, but they were too engrossed in discussing their plans for the inheritance. I left without even grabbing my wallet. The night air was brisk, and as I reached a familiar hilltop park, the tears started flowing. I cried silently, feeling the weight of frustration and exploitation. My emotions were a jumble, but I couldn't bring myself to mention divorce, not with Julie still in the picture. My mother's words echoed in my mind. Take care of Julie above all else, and I cried anew. Suddenly, someone approached me. Startled, I looked up, and they began speaking softly. 3 days later, I called my husband and in-laws to a restaurant with private rooms. So you're back home after that day. Did you withdraw the money, Ashley? You shouldn't leave without telling your husband. Ignoring their words, I handed them a document, a filled-out divorce notice. David, I want a divorce. What? What's this? David's panic was palpable, and my in-laws exchanged worried glances. I can't continue like this. I'm done. I replied firmly, facing David's escalating anger. You're leaving us just because you got the inheritance? You've become so greedy. Ashley retorted. Ever since I inherited from my mom, you've been out of control, quitting jobs, planning to live with your parents without consulting me, using my savings to build a house, and now planning trips. Who's the one who changed when the money came? I can't stay with people like this. And you can't just divorce me out of nowhere. That's right. Half of everything it is David's, including our savings and half of the inheritance. David and my in-laws barked as they closed in on me. Just as I was about to respond, the door opened, revealing Julie and Attorney Ed. Dad, Grandpa, Grandma, you should know better. Mom's inheritance isn't shared property, right, Mr. Ed? I'm Attorney Ed. Ashley's mom entrusted me with this matter, and I've been advising her. Ed explained with a bow, leaving David flustered. But wait, inherited property isn't shared. It's not subject to division, he clarified. What? That can't be right. Is this a mistake? David stuttered. That can't be. I was stunned by their reaction. It seemed they genuinely believed they were entitled to my inheritance. If that's the case, it's even more reason not to divorce. I'll stick by you no matter what, my husband shouted with bloodshot eyes, disregarding everything. Stop it, Julie intervened calmly. Since Mom inherited, Dad hasn't thought about her once. Grandpa and Grandma only care about money. They never even mention me. I can't see them as family. David and my in-laws were taken aback. When I was upset about the inheritance, Julie spoke up. She told me, Dad, Grandpa, and Grandma are wrong. They're trying to take Grandma's legacy. Mom, I'm with you. Let's fight this together. With those words, I made a decision, contacted Ed, and arranged this meeting. Julie, that's not true. Dad wants what's best for you. And you'd be happier with us, wouldn't you? My husband and in-laws pleaded desperately. Children shouldn't interfere, they added. Julie, with a look of frustration, said, I'm going with Mom. I can't stay with you anymore, and turned away. We've made our decision. Julie and I will leave, I said calmly, which angered David. I've never cheated, and you can't force a divorce. I'll get a lawyer. We'll get that money, he threatened. Then I'll handle it from here. Ed intervened quietly. The crux here is whether there are serious grounds for ending the marriage, quitting his job, using our savings without consent, making decisions unilaterally, and Julie expressing her distress. We have multiple arguments to support our case. Additionally, your daughter has recorded evidence of all of you pressuring Ashley for her inheritance. That should serve as compelling evidence. Damn it, David slumped, and my in-laws went pale. After Matt, Julie, and I left the restaurant. A year later, thanks to Ed's efforts, my divorce with David was finalized. Julie and I moved into my mother's old house, but we received numerous letters pleading for reconciliation, and David was spotted near Julie's school, prompting us to seek a restraining order with Ed's help. After that, things quieted down. Rumor has it they did build a duplex. My retired in-laws had to find jobs at a factory, and despite David's attempts, he ended up doing manual labor. According to neighbors, their new home was rife with constant arguments, making them unpopular in the neighborhood. Julie and I continue to live peacefully, supporting each other. Recently, Julie expressed a desire to study abroad in my mother's homeland. To sever ties completely with my ex-husband, we decided to move overseas, using a portion of my mother's inheritance. I'm certain she would approve. Julie seems to thrive in her new school, and I've found work as a teacher there. Here's hoping these tranquil days persist.
"Do I know you? Are you a friend of my husband from his middle school days?" I asked, eyeing the stranger warily. "I'm sorry, but you need to leave right now," I insisted, my voice firm and resolute. "I'm Jackson," the man introduced himself, seemingly unaffected by my demand. "I'm 33 and currently single. Today marked the wedding day of my colleague Lucas, who also happened to be a close friend." As I mingled with guests, a man who claimed to be a relative of Bryce, the groom, approached me and ushered me towards a waiting area just before the ceremony. Physically imposing and with a firm grip, the man guided me forcefully with his strong arms, leaving me feeling uneasy about his intentions. Thinking that perhaps the bride wanted to extend a pre-ceremony greeting, I followed the relative, assuming goodwill. Initially, I admired her apparent courtesy, but that admiration swiftly soured. It became evident that my presence was not welcomed for congenial purposes, but rather as a means of coercion. The bride, waiting in the anteroom, wore a malevolent expression that sent a shiver down my spine. Momentarily taken aback, I managed to compose myself and offered my congratulations. "Congratulations on your wedding," I said, trying to maintain a semblance of normalcy. Her response was abrupt and commanding. "You need to leave immediately," she ordered, leaving no room for argument. "What?" I blurted out in disbelief, unable to contain my reaction to the bride's statement. Her response to my question was exasperatingly patronizing. "This is precisely why dealing with uneducated individuals is such a hassle," she muttered under her breath, the disdain evident in her tone. It was clear that the bride harbored disdain for my educational background, or rather, the lack thereof. She didn't mince her words as she elaborated. "Allow me to clarify. My husband and I hail from esteemed lineage, and today's guests belong to the elite echelons of society. Your presence as a mere high school graduate is jarring and distasteful to me." The implications were not lost on me. My educational background had become a source of embarrassment in their esteemed circles. Naturally, I was aware of Lucas' prestigious background and the disdain some harbor towards those without extensive academic credentials. It wasn't a new experience for me. I'd encountered similar attitudes before. Despite this, my bond with Lucas transcended such superficial judgments, prompting me to attend his wedding. My sole intention was to partake in the joyous occasion and celebrate my friend's union. However, the bride's blatant disdain towards me, a guest she deemed unworthy, cast a shadow over the festivities. Feeling increasingly uncomfortable, I inquired if I could offer Lucas a few words of congratulation before taking my leave. The reaction from the bride and her relatives was immediate and explosive. Feeling overwhelmed by the tension and animosity, I couldn't help but mutter, "This is all a bit too much for me." Confused by their laughter in what seemed like a serious moment, I dared to inquire about the reason behind their amusement. The bride's response stunned me beyond belief. "My husband didn't invite you here out of friendship, but rather out of pity," she declared matter-of-factly. As she continued, the pieces of an unexpected puzzle started to fall into place. Despite my bewilderment, she proceeded, delving into the depths of my troubled past, one marked by parental abandonment and a childhood spent in the confines of an orphanage. She went on to explain how my struggles with malnutrition had left a lasting impact, evident in my tall yet slender frame even into adulthood. The revelation left me speechless, realizing that Lucas's invitation to his wedding was not an act of camaraderie, but rather an expression of empathy towards a former classmate enduring ongoing hardship. The bride jumped to a startling conclusion, assuming Lucas's invitation was an attempt to provide me with a meal at the wedding. I tried to reason with her, explaining the impossibility of such a scenario, but my protests fell on deaf ears. In a tone laced with disdain, she proceeded to belittle my worth, emphasizing the stark disparity between Lucas's accomplishments and mine. According to her, Lucas's compassion could potentially elevate his status, but she couldn't fathom allowing someone with only a middle school education to attend her wedding. She highlighted Lucas's prestigious academic background and successful career, contrasting it sharply with my own humble position as a janitor or security guard in the same company. The bride's words stung with contempt as she dismissed any notion of Lucas feeling sorry for me simply because we were former classmates. To her, the idea was preposterous, bordering on outrageous. We're both employed by the same company, one that's recently entered the public domain and shows considerable promise. It's a sought-after workplace, topping the charts for job seekers. Our company policy prioritizes talent acquisition, meaning individuals deemed valuable can join regardless of academic background. Despite the company's prestige, I acknowledge the disparity between a junior high school graduate like myself and a college-educated colleague. Yet, regardless of the motives behind Lucas's invitation, I simply wish to extend my congratulations. I harbored no expectations in return. However, earnestly articulate my sentiments and plead my case, the bride remains resolutely unyielding. Her gaze is consistently cold, as though regarding something unsavory. It's as if she's reluctant to even share the same airspace with me. She dismisses my heartfelt expressions of friendship with disdainful indifference. Are you trying to cozy up to my husband and snag a job with just a junior high school diploma? Her words were just a rejection of my presence at their wedding. They hinted at potential repercussions in the workplace. Caught off guard, I struggled to find a response. Despite the company's acceptance of individuals with minimal education, I couldn't bring myself to accept such condescension, especially from the spouse of my colleague. Suddenly, a male relative's actions escalated the tension further. Ignoring my protests, he forcibly grabbed at me, his actions invasive and aggressive. Attempting to fend him off, I reached for his arm, but he forcefully pushed me against the wall. A sharp pain shot through my back and chest, eliciting a low, guttural growl of pain. Enough, just leave, the relative barked before completing its sentence, abruptly opening the door to the waiting room. I was unceremoniously ejected, landing on the floor with a resounding thud. Despite the rough treatment, I resolved to carry on without offering my congratulations to Lucas. Preferring not to risk being barred from the wedding altogether, I sought refuge in a nearby cafe, biding my time before rejoining the festivities with the other guests. As the wedding reception commenced, I settled into my seat, hoping to blend in unnoticed. However, the bride's penetrating gaze soon found me. Without uttering a word, her lips moved silently, forming a single question directed at me. "What are you doing here?" The bride's expression shifted as the relative man spotted me. With determination, he lunged towards me, seizing my arm in an attempt to forcibly remove me. However, this time, I wasn't going to be ejected so easily. Nearby attendees sprang to action, rallying around me, shielding me from the relative's grasp. Panic flashed across the relative's face as he struggled to comprehend the situation. Sensing the urgency, the bride seemed equally flustered. Seizing the moment, I grabbed hold of a nearby microphone and addressed the bride, who remained bewildered by the unfolding events. "Bride, I owe you an apology for my earlier words. My desire to witness Lucas's wedding led me here today," I declared loudly, ensuring my message reached her despite the chaos surrounding us. Lucas, seated at the head table, overheard our exchange and interjected with confusion and concern. "What's happening here? What's all this about?" he demanded. The bride, visibly shaken by Lucas's unexpected intrusion, responded in a tremulous voice, "It's nothing, just go back to your seat, Lucas." With a hint of desperation, she added, "I asked Jackson to leave because he only has a junior high school education. It wouldn't be a good match for us, Lucas." Feeling a sense of resignation, I addressed the bride, who appeared lost in her own distress. "I apologize for any inconvenience I've caused. If it's what you desire, I'll sever all professional ties with Lucas. Please forgive me for any disruption I've caused." A hush descended over the entire hall as my declaration hung in the air. The bride was the first to break the silence. "What? Fired? What's going on?" Lucas's voice quivered with confusion. What did you just say?" Recognition dawned on Jackson's face as he processed my words. "That's correct. I am Jackson, the president of our company," I affirmed, my tone steady. "I may have only graduated from junior high school, but I founded a delivery company at the age of 16. With nothing but a bicycle, I transformed it into a major corporation over the span of a decade. And in response to changing consumer habits, we swiftly transitioned into a publicly traded entity." Lucas wasn't just a friend to me, he was a lifeline, a source of unwavering support when I needed it most. He shared his meals with me, showing kindness and compassion during times when I struggled with malnutrition. Raised in an orphanage until the age of 15, I lacked the familial stability that Lucas enjoyed from the age of 12, when he was adopted by his current parents. Despite our different upbringings, Lucas and I remained close even after our paths diverged geographically. When we embarked on the journey of entrepreneurship together, Lucas vowed to dedicate himself to our shared vision. Witnessing his transformation from a shy individual to a confident groom filled me with immense joy. My determination to congratulate Lucas stemmed from a deep-rooted friendship and gratitude. I remained steadfast even in the face of the bride's objections. Unbeknownst to me, the bride's disdain stemmed from my educational background, yet I was unaware that being a junior high school graduate didn't preclude me from holding a significant position within our company. The authority to terminate employees rested with me, a fact that the bride herself had acknowledged when she requested I sever ties with Lucas. I gently assured her that I had complied with her wishes. In response, she uttered a cold remark, confirming Lucas's termination. The bride, previously frozen in shock, muttered disdainfully, "Fired? If you're such a failure, I have no use for you." Without hesitation, she renounced the marriage entirely, citing my lack of elite status and high income as deal breakers. It was a startling turn of events as she promptly called off the engagement with Lucas, who had just been dismissed from his job. The attendees erupted in uproar at her abrupt declaration. Amidst the chaos, any semblance of our previously amicable relationship vanished. Accusations flew as she labeled the situation a marriage scam, demanding compensation from Lucas for the broken engagement. Lucas's revulsion was palpable in the midst of the chaos. Quietly, I reached out and tapped the bride on the shoulder as she continued to raise her voice. Leading in, I whispered, "You might want to start saving up for alimony payments." With that, I initiated a video playback on the projector, revealing footage captured by a phone I had strategically left recording in the bride's waiting room. The recording, inadvertently triggered when a male relative manhandled me, potentially held crucial evidence of my injury. As I was pushed against the wall, the phone fell, continuing to record. What it captured was damning. The bride's indiscretion with the same male relative in the waiting room. As the ceremony commenced, I retraced my steps to the waiting room in search of the phone I suspected I had dropped. To my relief, I discovered it nestled in a corner, untouched. However, the shock of what I witnessed upon playing back the recording left me reeling. Witnessing such deceitful behavior on what should have been a sacred occasion shook me to the core. It was difficult to comprehend how anyone could stoop to such lows. Driven by a sense of moral obligation, I immediately sought out Lucas to disclose the damning evidence. The revelation of the bride's true nature sparked a fiery reaction from Lucas's relatives, who unleashed their fury upon the bride's family. In response, the bride's relatives vehemently denied any association with the man implicated in the recording. They adamantly refused to acknowledge any connection to him. It later emerged that the man accompanying the bride was nothing more than an unfaithful partner. Despite his charming demeanor, he was essentially a freeloader, lacking any meaningful employment. The bride, yearning for a life of prestige and sophistication within an educated family, sought to elevate her status by securing a marriage with Lucas, a gentle and unassuming man. Her intentions were revealed to be far from genuine, painting her in a negative light. In contrast, Lucas, dedicated to his studies and somewhat naive in matters of love, possessed a trusting nature that left him vulnerable to manipulation. Ultimately, I'm grateful that my humble education allowed me to see through the deceitful intentions of those involved. Never did I anticipate that my educational background would prove valuable in such a manner. The deceitful bride faced the consequences of her actions, being ordered to pay a hefty sum of $5 million for wedding expenses and an additional $3 million for terminating the engagement, accumulating the staggering debt of $8 million. As a result of the humiliation she endured, she found herself isolated from her family. Her unfaithful partner, alarmed by the overwhelming debt, fled the scene, leaving her to face the repercussions alone. With her once inviolable life now in shambles, the bride was forced into a solitary existence, residing in a rundown apartment and toiling tirelessly day and night in a desperate attempt to repay her debts. The arrival of the deceitful woman inadvertently strengthened the bond between Lucas and me, fostering a deeper friendship as we navigated through the ordeal. Meanwhile, our company experienced a period of rapid and steady growth. Observing Lucas's enduring desire for marriage, I contemplated accompanying him to a matchmaking event in the future.
Stop it. Quit faking illness to slow me down. You're just a housewife. My husband, Matt, brushed off my hand as I struggled, feeling unwell, and stormed out. I'd always thought marriage meant sticking together through thick and thin, but Matt left me hanging. Despair echoed in my mind as I started to black out. Someone unexpected reached out to help me in that moment. I'm Michelle, 32 years old. I tied the knot with my husband, also 32, a year ago, and we've been living a regular life since we met at work. He supported my decision to keep working after marriage. With both of us working, we split the household chores. But since my husband wasn't great at chores, I ended up asking him to handle only the easy tasks. Surprisingly, he pitched in without complaint, so I had no complaints about our marriage. Then one day, after dealing with some minor health issues, I went to the doctor and got the surprise of my life. Congratulations. You're about 7 weeks pregnant, the doctor announced. My husband and I shared our excitement. I'm going to be a dad. It's hard to wrap my head around it, but I'm sure it'll sink in gradually. We chatted, looking forward to the future. I believed a happy life awaited us, but reality turned out differently. Hey, what's for dinner? It's your turn, right? And the bathroom needs cleaning too. My husband reminded me. I'm sorry. I felt terrible today and couldn't do anything. I replied, battling severe morning sickness, constant nausea, and struggling to even stand. I spent my days in bed, unable to work. I kept missing days, but my husband didn't try to understand my suffering. He was unsympathetic. To him, it seemed like I was just slacking off both at work and at home. He began expressing his frustration more openly with heavy sighs. Hey, don't use pregnancy as an excuse to slack off. I have to work outside. You should handle the household chores, he scolded. I often wondered how he could say such hurtful things, but to my husband, who came home stressed from work, a wife unable to handle household chores must have been frustrating. I considered retreating to my parents' home until my health improved, but I worried it would drive a permanent wedge between us. Morning sickness is temporary, and it should ease up in another couple of months, so I resolved to tough it out until then. However, my husband's disdainful behavior only worsened over time. Although the morning sickness eventually faded, my health remained poor, leading to multiple hospital stays. I made the difficult choice to take a break from work. I couldn't risk jeopardizing the baby's health by overexerting myself during pregnancy. Even after discussing it thoroughly with my doctor and employer, my husband's complaints persisted. Stop depending on me for everything. If you can't work or manage chores, it's your problem, he griped. Maybe he had a point, but every decision I made was to safeguard our unborn child. Why do I deserve such treatment? Despite enduring his unfair behavior, I mustered the courage to bring up our living expenses. My sick pay isn't much. Could you chip in more from your salary? But he remained indifferent. Why should I have to cover your expenses too? Doubts about my future with this man crept in, and my anxiety grew with each passing day. I had hoped that getting pregnant would bring positive changes, but everything seemed to go wrong instead. The final blow came from my mother-in-law, Mary. Michelle, how are you feeling? She asked me one day. Mary had raised my husband single-handedly after divorcing when he was young. She's a caring and active person who has always treated me with kindness. But then she said something that struck a nerve. It's important to stay active during pregnancy. Matt must find it tough to handle chores while working, so you should do your part. Mary's words hit me like a tidal wave. I know she means well. She's been through childbirth herself and has valuable experience. But in that moment, all I could hear was, stop being lazy. Handle all the chores if you're not working. It only made things worse. You're absolutely right, I replied, pretending to agree. I had considered opening up to Mary about my husband's unfair treatment, but her lack of understanding left me feeling even more alone. If you need anything, just let me know, Mary said before ending the call. But I was left feeling unsettled and unresolved. Then came the breaking point. I woke up that morning feeling feverish, battling aches and occasional waves of nausea. Despite my condition, I pushed through and managed to prepare breakfast for my husband. But as I collapsed onto the couch, he looked at me with disdain and remarked, "You don't need to exaggerate how difficult it is." After he left for work, my health took a turn for the worse, and I realized I wouldn't be able to muster the energy to cook dinner. Should I order takeout? I pondered. No, money's tight. I reminded myself. The funds my husband provided barely covered our expenses, and I found myself dipping into savings every month. With the looming medical costs of childbirth, I worried about our financial stability. Summoning the courage, I called my husband. I'm really not feeling well today. I'm sorry, but I can't manage dinner. Could you grab something on your way home? His response cut deep. What? What are you talking about? You're just a housewife. But I really can't move. If it's shopping, you should handle it. Don't make your husband do such things. He snapped before abruptly hanging up, leaving me in tears. After a while, I heard the door slam open. My husband had returned. Hey, Matt, what about dinner? I asked weakly. I'm heading out for drinks. I'll eat out. Don't need dinner? He dismissed. Feeling feverish and barely able to stand, I pleaded, I'm really struggling today. I wish you could stay with me. But he brushed me off, saying, Stop it. Don't get in my way. You're just a housewife. You're probably just faking it as usual, before storming out. Too drained to move, I collapsed at the entrance, silently begging for help in my mind. But the empty house offered no solace. Then, from a distance, I heard a familiar voice calling out to me through the haze of my consciousness, Stay with me. Who could it be? My consciousness slipped away. When I regained awareness, Mary was by my side, her expression filled with concern as I lay in a hospital bed. Michelle, oh, thank goodness you're awake, she said with relief. Mary had found me collapsed at home and called an ambulance. Don't worry, the baby is fine. I'll call the doctor, she'd assured me before quickly leaving the room, wiping away her tears. The doctor informed me that I had severe anemia along with a seasonal cold, which posed risks for the baby. Despite feeling feverish, I was shocked to hear that I had a high fever upon arrival at the hospital. But how? Mary questioned me, explaining that she had come over to reprimand me for supposedly slacking off on household chores. After hearing constant complaints from my husband, she decided to check on me and found me collapsed at the entrance. I'm sorry. I acted harshly without listening to your side, Mary admitted, expressing regret for her earlier judgment. However, there was another reason for her visit. I wanted to thank you for the gift. That red cardigan suits you so well. It had been Mary's birthday last week, and since I got married, I made sure to send her gifts on both Mother's Day and her birthday. Aware of her increasing sensitivity to cold as she aged, I chose a cardigan this year, stylish yet practical, reflecting her youthful spirit. I remembered every word you've said, and I truly appreciate the thoughtful gift, Mary acknowledged, her voice trembling with emotion. I had begun to wonder if you were truly as lazy as my son claimed, she confessed, tears welling up as she apologized for the misunderstanding. It's all right. I've been wanting to talk to you about my husband, but it's been difficult to find the words, I confessed through tears to Mary. Having her by my side brought some relief to my heavy heart. As we both shed tears, Mary's expression turned to one of fiery anger. That man, my own son, is unforgivable for letting his pregnant wife suffer like this, she exclaimed, her lips trembling with fury as she tightly clutched her handkerchief. Michelle, what do you plan to do about your relationship with him? When I shared my honest thoughts, Mary nodded in solidarity. I'm here for you, always by your side, she affirmed, her supportive words giving me the courage to take action. After spending a week in the hospital, I was discharged with Mary by my side. Not once did my husband reach out to me during my stay. At that point, I was beyond caring. Upon returning home, I was hit by a repulsive odor, despite having been gone for just 4 days. What's that smell? It's like living with a wild animal, Mary remarked, almost eliciting a chuckle from me, though I held it back. The stench was indeed unbearable. My husband lay sprawled on the living room couch, snoring loudly with drool dribbling from his mouth. Wake up, you foolish son! Mary's voice echoed through the room, startling my husband awake instantly. Huh, Mom, you? My husband began to protest, but Mary cut him off sharply. Michelle was in the hospital. What's with this mess? Even a zoo would be cleaner. Mary's observation hit home. In just a week, our home had descended into chaos. Empty beer bottles and food scraps cluttered the sink, damp towels and underwear were strewn about, and the floor was sticky with spilled substances. It's worse than a zoo. What kind of life have you been living? I muttered, earning a glare from my husband. Don't act all righteous. This is all because of you. Even a baby wouldn't create such a mess. You can't do anything on your own, can you? I stated calmly, recognizing the truth in my words. Reflecting on it, I realized that I had managed the cleaning and laundry quite efficiently when I was at home. It had never resembled a zoo enclosure, and I had never imagined my husband would be so inept at managing life. Why did you leave, Michelle, and go out? Mary's imposing presence silenced my husband completely. I couldn't help but think that men always seem to cave in when faced with their mothers, regardless of their age. It's not like that. She was just being childish, telling me not to go out drinking. Are you suggesting that Michelle, with her high fever and pale face, was faking it? Are you out of your mind? Even Mary, usually composed, was now scolding him loudly. My husband remained silent, his glare directed at me. I could almost hear his inner voice accusing me of tattling. Then he muttered resentfully, "Don't get ahead of yourself. I've been supporting you all this time." In the past, his words might have intimidated me, but not anymore. Fine then, I don't need your support anymore. I'm prepared for that. What I'm saying is, I don't need you anymore. What wife would want to stay with a grown man who couldn't take care of himself? I had reached my breaking point with my husband. His verbal abuse was intolerable, something that perhaps could have been resolved through discussion. However, he had crossed another line by leaving me with a high fever to go out for drinks. As his wife lay in the hospital, he transformed our home into a den of filth, failing miserably at the responsibilities of both a husband and a father. And what were you really doing, suddenly going out for drinks? I demanded, fixing him with a stern glare. My husband visibly flinched, a comical reaction considering the seriousness of the situation. That's none of your business, he retorted defensively. No, it is my business. I'm your mother. I have every right to know. Tell me the truth. Mary asserted firmly, causing my husband to tremble with panic. If you won't confess, should I present the undeniable evidence? Evidence? What do you mean? His complexion paled as realization dawned on him. Yes, confess now. You're only making it worse for yourself. Under Mary's unwavering interrogation, he finally hung his head in shame and admitted, "I'm sorry." In essence, he had been having an affair with a coworker since I became pregnant and managing household chores, and his responsibilities became too much for him to handle. What's her name? Which department? How often did you meet each week? Mary and I bombarded my husband with questions, capturing the entire confrontation on my mobile phone. All right, confession evidence collected. Thanks for speaking up so honestly, I said with a smile as I stopped the recording. My husband's expression hardened once more. You tricked me. Yes, who would have thought you were actually cheating? Thanks to you. We didn't have to hire a detective. Much appreciated, I replied coolly. You deceived me, my husband spat out in frustration, trying to shift the blame onto me for his infidelity. His logic was baffling. You were just pretending to be sick to get my sympathy, weren't you? He accused. It's mutual, not even close, I retorted, feeling increasingly despondent as he refused to acknowledge his own faults. Mary let out a deep sigh and muttered, selfish, tyrannical, always making excuses. You're just like your father, whom I divorced, you know that? Dad. My husband was taken aback by Mary's unexpected revelation. That's true, he admitted quietly, his resentment towards his father resurfacing. His father was infamous for causing trouble when drunk, but my husband never imagined he'd be compared to him. I never got drunk and caused a scene, he protested, but Mary was referring to something deeper. Your father also abandoned me during my pregnancy to go drinking, remember? Sons often mirror their fathers. I should have divorced him before you were old enough to remember. Mary explained, her tone tinged with both disdain and sorrow. My husband was left speechless, frozen in shock. A father who negatively influences his children is better off gone, don't you think, Michelle? Mary turned to me for agreement. Yes, it's unnecessary. In fact, it should be avoided, I concurred. With Mary's valid reasoning for divorce, my husband, still speechless, was handed the divorce papers by me. However, he clung to us desperately. Let's reconsider this. We're going to have a child. Can't we calm down and talk? His pleading tone resembled that of a child begging his mother. What are you saying? That ship has sailed long ago, I replied firmly. So what am I supposed to do now? He asked, covering his face in distress, but still showing some resistance. Mary delivered the final ultimatum. Enough. If you persist in clinging to Michelle, I'll sever our mother-son relationship. What will you choose? Why won't you take my side, Mom? He appeared defeated, while Mary stood resolute by my side until the end. Eventually, I filed for divorce in my 7th month of pregnancy. I hadn't anticipated our relationship deteriorating with the impending arrival of our child, but perhaps it was inevitable. Following the divorce, I moved back to my parents' home and gave birth to a healthy baby boy. My parents were taken aback, having been unaware until my return with a visible pregnancy. The lawyer recommended by my father handled the divorce proceedings, ensuring compensation for the mental and financial distress I endured. Additionally, I made sure the other woman contributed her share post-divorce. Despite my ex-husband's repeated visits to my parents' house, pleading to see the child, I responded with biting sarcasm. When will you fulfill your child support obligations? To which he nonsensically replied, We don't need that. We're family, we belong together. What nonsense! Just fulfill your basic duty as a father. Even if you were a failure as a husband, you still have responsibilities as a parent, or are you even worse than zero in everything? I watched as my husband left, his expression resembling that of someone struck on the head, visibly dejected. His father's influence must have left a lasting mark on him. Word began to circulate that he had resigned from his job. He vented to his colleagues about our divorce, adamantly asserting his innocence, but it backfired spectacularly. Whether he truly believed he was blameless or not, his recounting of the verbal and physical abuse he inflicted on me only fueled disdain from his coworkers. Simultaneously, rumors of his affair with a female coworker spread like wildfire. His reprehensible behavior garnered no sympathy, resulting in his ostracization at work and eventual resignation. Despite his delusions of reconciliation, I harbored no such intentions. Michelle, are you planning to return to work soon? How's your health? A concerned acquaintance inquired. Yes, I'm much better now. I need to work for the sake of my little one. I replied resolutely, that's what being a dependable mom entails. Unbeknownst to my ex-husband, I occasionally meet with Mary and my child. Initially hesitant, Mary insisted that we were strangers after the divorce, but upon hearing my heartfelt gratitude, she gladly held my son. Please guide me as a fellow single mother, I implored. Leave it to me. Let's support each other like comrades or detectives who've vanquished a villain, she responded with a warm smile. Somehow, Mary and I have forged a closer bond than ever before. It's not a bad relationship at all, but at times, I can't help but worry. You're just like your father, Mary's words echo in my mind. Will my child follow in his father's footsteps one day? Is blood truly thicker than water? It's futile to dwell on such thoughts now. It's a concern for the distant future. However, I am resolved to instill in him the values of righteousness, kindness, and empathy. My son is simply my son, nothing more, nothing less. As a mother, my sole purpose is to dedicate my life to nurturing him. As the winter sun gently pierces the cold sky, it feels as though nature itself is cheering me on.